Across the galaxy, soldiers and merchants whispered about humans, their voices always lowered, their eyes shifting nervously as if the very word might summon danger. Most species in the galaxy had faced wars, invasions, and rebellions, but the tales of humans were different. They were not just stories of battles, but of shadows, of hunters who moved like ghosts and struck like predators. The galactic fleet of the Varen Empire believed these were nothing more than exaggerated myths. To them, humans were a primitive race, a species trapped on a small blue planet near a dying sun. So when one of their patrols caught a lone human scout vessel drifting near the outer rim, they thought it was an easy prize. The alien commander ordered his soldiers to board, convinced they would capture humans alive and display them as trophies. The boarding party entered the dark ship, weapons raised. The corridors were silent, the air cold, the lights flickering weakly. No signs of battle, no blood, no resistance. It felt abandoned, and the soldiers laughed, saying the humans had fled in fear. But then the first scream echoed. One soldier vanished around a corner and never returned. The others rushed to find him, only to discover his helmet lying on the floor, cracked open, the visor smeared with blood. The soldier himself was gone without a trace. Panic began to grow. The commander ordered them to search carefully. He reminded them that humans were weak, fragile, nothing compared to trained Varen warriors. But deep inside, a cold shiver touched even his scales, because the silence in the ship was unnatural, too heavy, as if something unseen was breathing with them. One by one, the soldiers disappeared, some dragged into vents, others pulled into dark rooms, their screams cut short in seconds. There were no blaster shots, no clear fight, only silence followed by absence. The humans were not fighting like soldiers, they were hunting like predators. The commander tried to retreat, but the doors locked. A voice whispered from the darkness, in a language he understood, "Do you still believe we are weak?" His blood ran cold, because the voice was calm, steady, and close. He fired his weapon wildly, but nothing answered except the echo of his own fear. When the few surviving soldiers returned to their fleet, their eyes were hollow. They could not explain what they had seen. They spoke of shadows that moved faster than sight, of enemies who never missed, of silence that crushed the soul. The captured human ship was destroyed from within before anyone could study it, and the name of humanity spread again like wildfire. In the halls of the Galactic Council, ambassadors argued. Some laughed and said it was impossible. Others trembled and said the old warnings were true, that humans were not warm-blooded allies or enemies, that in war they became something colder than any ice in the void. Whispers turned into fear, fear turned into silence, and silence across the galaxy always meant one thing: death was near. The survivors from the Varen fleet returned broken. Their voices trembled as they tried to explain the impossible. Ships filled with thousands of trained soldiers had been silenced by only a handful of humans. But when they spoke before the Galactic Council, many laughed. To them, it was weakness, not proof of human strength. The High Speaker of the Council slammed his staff and called the meeting to order. Dozens of species filled the chamber, their eyes glowing, scales shifting, feathers bristling. Each carried pride of their people, warriors of their kind. But as the human report played on the screen, silence spread. Images of helmets cracked open, bodies dragged away into shadows. Even the boldest species shifted uncomfortably. "This is an illusion," one senator hissed. "Humans cannot do this. They are fragile," another argued. But then an old scientist, small and gray, stepped forward. Her name was Drakkar, a historian from the ancient archives, and her words made the chamber grow colder. "You laugh," she said, her voice thin but sharp. "But I have studied humans. I have read what your ancestors erased from records. Humans come from a death world, a place filled with predators, venom, storms, and endless hunger. Every day of their history they fought to live. Their bones grew strong, their minds sharper, their hearts colder." Some shouted at her to stop, but she raised her hands and displayed the old records. Holograms flickered, of humans fighting giant beasts with nothing but stone spears, of humans surviving fire, frost, famine, and endless war. They never surrendered, not to nature, not to each other, not to extinction. "Do you know why they are feared as the coldest killers alive?" Drakkar whispered. "Because they feel fear and still move forward, because they feel pain and still fight, because when every other species hesitates, humans strike, and when you corner them, They smile, for that is when they are most dangerous. The chamber filled with silence. Some shook their heads in denial. Others avoided her gaze. But a few, the oldest council members, lowered their eyes as if remembering something, a memory they had buried, the secret that the council had kept for centuries. One ambassador finally spoke, his voice shaking. The truth is not new. Long ago, when humans first reached the stars, they fought against an empire greater than any today, and they won. Gasps spread across the chamber. The ambassador's feathers lay flat against his body as he continued. That empire was erased. Their worlds burned, their fleets shattered. The council erased those records to protect the galaxy from fear. But humans have never forgotten. Suspense grew heavier. Every council member felt the weight of the words. If the humans had once destroyed an empire, what would they do now? Were the rumors true? That humans did not fight wars for territory, but for survival itself, and survival meant exterminating threats. Outside the chamber, in the darkness of space, fleets were already moving. Some species prepared to strike humans before their shadow grew too long. Others argued to leave Earth untouched, hoping never to wake the predator again. But it was too late, because humans had already seen the Council's fear, and fear was always the beginning of war. The whispers grew louder in every corner of the galaxy. Some called humans monsters, others called them demons. But one name spread the fastest, carried like poison on every world: the cold-blooded killers. And though the Council still debated, humanity was already listening, already watching, and already planning what came next. The Council thought they could silence the truth. They believed that if they hid old records, fear would vanish. But fear does not vanish. It spreads. And now, across the galaxy, entire fleets whispered of humans. They whispered of predators who wore smiles instead of mercy. The Veyron Empire, humiliated by their lost soldiers, wanted revenge. They captured one human alive, Commander Elias Kane. He was dragged before the Veyron High General, bound in chains. The aliens expected screams, panic, and weakness, but Kane's face remained calm, his eyes colder than steel. The High General laughed, towering over the human. "You are flesh, fragile, soft, a mistake of evolution," he sneered. "Your kind will never survive against empires. You are prey, nothing more." Kane tilted his head, his voice quiet, but every word carried weight. "You think we are warm-blooded prey?" he said. "But in war, we are colder than ice. You fight for honor, for territory, for glory. We fight for survival, and survival allows no mercy." The chamber grew silent. Even the soldiers who mocked him before now felt unease. There was no anger in Kane's voice, no fear, only calculation, like a predator measuring the exact moment to strike. The general ordered his execution at dawn, but when dawn came, the prison was empty. No alarms had sounded, no guards reported trouble. Every weapon had been sabotaged, every ship's system infected. Kane had vanished, leaving only one message carved into the wall: "Prey runs, predators plan." Hours later, entire fleets of the Veyron Empire began to fail. Engines refused to start, weapons fired on their own allies, supplies rotted overnight, soldiers turned on each other in confusion. The Empire thought it was sabotage from spies, but when the Council investigated, the truth became clear. It was the humans, not with numbers, not with strength, but with patience, precision, and cold calculations. They had infiltrated without warning, planted their seeds of destruction, and when the moment came, they pulled every string at once. No blasters, no grand battles, only silence as empires collapsed. The Council gathered again, their voices filled with panic. "They are too few. They cannot fight us all," one shouted. "They are shadows. They are predators," another whispered. And Drakkar, the historian, spoke again. "This is what I warned you. You think war is about fleets, ships, and firepower, but to humans, war is about breaking the mind, and when the mind breaks, the body follows." Meanwhile, on a distant human ship drifting in the void, Kane stood before his crew, his voice calm, his orders exact. "Do not strike their armies first," he said. "Strike their food, their water, their breath. Let them starve. Let them fear shadows. A dead soldier is not our victory. A broken empire is." The crew obeyed, silent and ruthless, each human trained not just to kill, but to think like the predators their ancestors once were. They moved quietly across systems, invisible, unstoppable, one empire after another began to collapse from within, and in the stillness of space, the galaxy finally began to understand. Humans were not fighting wars like anyone else. They were not soldiers, they were hunters, and hunters always finish what they start. The whispers of fear grew into screams. Some species begged for peace, others prepared for war, but the galaxy was already too late because the humans had already chosen their path. And once humans chose survival, there was no force in the universe that could stop them. The galaxy thought it was ready. The council declared that humanity must be crushed before their shadow spread too far. Across dozens of systems, fleets gathered, 1,000 ships, 1,000,000 soldiers, weapons glowing with power. The plan was simple: strike Earth, burn their home, erase their kind forever. But humans had already calculated. They did not wait for the invasion. They allowed it. They let the fleets come closer, deeper into human territory. Every alien commander believed this was victory. They believed Earth was defenseless, trapped between giants. When the armadas entered Neptune's orbit, silence greeted them. No resistance, no human fleets in sight. The alien admirals laughed, ordering their soldiers forward. But then the cold began. The temperature around their ships dropped sharply. Systems flickered, weapons froze, engines stalled, hulls cracked as unseen ice formed across their surfaces. It was not natural. It was human design. Neptune's frozen storms had been turned into a trap, an ocean of invisible mines, hidden drones, and weapons designed not to burn, but to freeze. Ships began to shatter in silence. Some crumbled under sudden pressure shifts. Others spun helplessly into the storm. Entire fleets vanished without a single human ship firing openly. Panic spread through the alien ranks. How could humans, so few in number, command such control over the void? On Earth, commanders watched the battle unfold with calm eyes. To them, this was not war, this was survival. One officer spoke quietly. They think war is about fire, but true war is about silence. In the council chambers, news of the destruction arrived like thunder. Admirals who once laughed now stood pale. One voice broke the silence. They kill without glory, without warning. They kill with silence, and silence is worse than fire. Still, some refused to accept defeat. The Varan Empire demanded reinforcements. Humans are only shadows, only tricks, they shouted. But deep inside, fear coiled tighter, because every empire knew humans had turned their own world into a weapon. If Neptune was a trap, what waited near Earth itself? Meanwhile, survivors of the frozen massacre drifted through space, their ships broken, their soldiers trembling. One alien captain whispered as he recorded his last message. They are not warm-blooded. They are colder than the void itself. They do not fight. They erase. Tell the galaxy. Run. Back on Earth, Commander Elias Kane stood with his crew. The trap at Neptune had been only the beginning. His voice carried the cold precision of a man who understood fear. We will not chase them yet. Fear is a weapon. Let them spread it for us. Every whisper will do more damage than any fleet we could send. And so humanity waited in the dark, patient as predators, while across the stars empires trembled. Every shadow looked like a human, every silence felt like death. The galaxy had tried to burn Earth. Instead, they had walked into ice. The legend grew, the whispers became warnings, and soon, even the bravest soldiers hesitated when they heard the word. Humans. The council chambers trembled with arguments. Fleets had been lost, admirals humiliated, empires shaken. Still, many tried to convince themselves that Neptune's slaughter was a trick, but deep inside, the oldest members of the council knew it was not the first time this had happened. In the darkest corner of the archives, sealed for centuries, lay the records of the first contact wars, erased from public history. It was a story that every empire wanted forgotten, because it was the story of humanity's first war in the stars. A young scribe named Lyra, curious and bold, uncovered the hidden files. She had heard the whispers. that humanity had once faced an empire older and greater than the Council itself. When she brought the records forward, the chamber fell silent, for the holograms told a tale more terrifying than any rumor. Long ago, when humans first left Earth, they met the Sithari Dominion. The Sithari were vast, their fleets stretched across hundreds of systems. They thought of humans as pests, easy to conquer. They launched their invasion with pride, burning colonies, enslaving survivors. But what they did not understand was that every act of cruelty only sharpened the human will. The record showed humans adapting in ways the galaxy had never seen. They fought with weapons stolen from their enemies, twisting technology into something deadlier. They survived without supply chains, eating roots, drinking recycled water, hiding in frozen moons. They turned every weakness into strength, every loss into fuel. And then, they struck back. The chamber gasped as the holograms replayed the end of the Sithari. Entire fleets cut apart not by numbers but by precision. Worlds burned not in rage but in calculated silence. The Dominion, proud and ancient, begged for mercy, but humanity gave none. They erased an empire from existence, until only ruins and echoes remained. Lyra's voice shook as she read the final line of the archive. Humanity will not fight for conquest. Humanity fights only when forced. But if you force them, they will not stop until nothing remains. The council erupted in panic. Some demanded the records destroyed again. Others shouted to say, "Had humanity must be erased before history repeated itself." But a few, the wisest, sat in silence, their eyes heavy with dread. Because they understood the truth, history was already repeating. On Earth, leaders already knew the galaxy's secret. For generations, they had been preparing, not for war of territory, but for war of survival. In underground vaults, fleets were hidden, weapons designed not to dazzle but to erase. Every child learned not just to dream, but to endure. Humanity remembered what the galaxy wanted to forget. Meanwhile, survivors from Neptune's massacre whispered to their people. Their words spread faster than any fleet. "They are the same as before," soldiers muttered. "The same monsters that erased the Dominion, the same killers that the Council buried in silence." Panic gripped worlds that had once felt untouchable. Armies marched nervously, fleets patrolled with shaking claws, and always in the background the same question burned. If humans once destroyed an empire greater than the Council, what would they do now, when threatened again? In hidden chambers, alien leaders spoke in whispers. "We should have left Earth alone," one admitted. "They are not prey, they are the storm that ends empires," another said. And outside in the vast cold of space, human ships drifted silently, waiting, watching, planning. For the galaxy had learned one truth too late. You can bury history, you can silence records, you can erase the past, but you cannot erase predators, and humanity had always been predators. The galaxy was trembling. The Council tried to hold its order, but fear had already broken it. Empires that once stood proud now looked over their shoulders. Every shadow felt like a human ship. Every silence felt like death. The Veyron fleets fled after Neptune's trap. Their commanders swore to regroup, but regrouping never came because before they reached their homeworlds, their ships began to vanish, one by one, without alarms, without battles, just silence, and then no thing. At first, the galaxy thought it was chance, pirates, mechanical failures, lost ships, but soon the truth became clear. Humans were no longer defending Earth. They were hunting. A single human vessel could erase entire fleets. Not by strength, but by intelligence. They cut communications first. Then supplies vanished. Then soldiers turned against each other in confusion. By the time blasters were fired, the humans were already gone, leaving wreckage in their wake. On one distant colony, an alien admiral made a desperate stand. He rallied his soldiers, shouted that courage could defeat shadows. But as the night fell, lights in the city went dark, supplies spoiled, weapons jammed. And when dawn came, half his army was gone, without a single shot fired, only the human insignia burned into the ground. We were here. The chase spread across the stars. No fleet could escape. No system was safe. Humans struck supply lines, fuel depots, communications hubs. They did not fight wars. They dismantled them piece by piece. It was not destruction for glory. It was survival turned into art. Predators never chased prey for revenge. They chased because prey was food, And now the galaxy understood. To humanity, survival was the only law. In the council chambers, voices rose in panic. They fight like predators, one ambassador whispered. They do not stop, they do not sleep, another said. But the worst words came from a veteran who had seen the first contact wars and lived. They enjoy the hunt, he said quietly. They do not fight to win battles. They fight to end wars, and they never stop until the last enemy is gone. Across the stars, survivors carried stories that spread like fire. One ship captain told how a human infiltrated his bridge, killed no one, and simply whispered, "Run faster." The captain obeyed, but still lost half his fleet to traps hidden along his escape path. Another survivor told of human soldiers waiting in silence inside abandoned ships, striking only when fear had rotted the enemy's mind. The pattern was always the same: patience, precision, silence. Meanwhile on Earth, Commander Elias Kane studied the maps of the galaxy. Red lights marked fallen fleets, broken empires, dead colonies. His crew stood ready, silent as ever. "We do not chase them for revenge," Kane said calmly. "We chase them because they called us prey, and prey must learn the truth." His eyes hardened as he looked at the maps. "This is not war," he continued. "This is the hunt." And the galaxy knew there was no safe place, no strong fortress, no powerful fleet that could protect them, because the humans were not fighting on the battlefield anymore. They were already inside every shadow, every silence, every fear. The endless chase had begun, and in the void, where stars flickered like cold eyes, every alien knew the same truth. You can run from many things, but you cannot run forever from predators, especially not when the predators are human. The galaxy was breaking. Worlds that once shone with pride now lived in silence. Fleets that once filled the void with power now drifted as wrecks. And through it all, the same word spread from one world to the next. Humans. The council gathered for one last desperate meeting. Their voices were no longer strong, their pride no longer sharp. They had seen their empires bleed without battles, their soldiers crumble without war, and now they whispered of surrender. But how does one surrender to a predator? How do you beg mercy from something that kills not for glory, but for survival? They argued endlessly, some demanding peace, others shouting for war, until the chamber fell silent, for the doors opened and the humans arrived. Commander Elias Kane stepped into the chamber with a small escort. No fleets behind him, no grand armies, just silence. The same silence that had haunted the galaxy for months. The ambassadors trembled, some raised their weapons, but Kane only looked at them, calm and cold. "You called us prey," Kane said, his voice steady. "And prey must always learn the truth." His words echoed through the chamber, sharp as blades. "We are not warm-blooded allies. We are not fragile victims. When threatened, we are colder than the void itself." One alien ambassador stood shaking. "Why?" he demanded. "Why do you fight this way? Why do you bring silence instead of mercy? Why do you make the galaxy fear you more than death itself?" Kane's eyes narrowed. "Because we do not fight for conquest," he said. "We fight for survival, and when survival is threatened, mercy does not exist. When you came for Earth, you did not come for peace. You came with chains, and so we answered with fire and ice." The chamber shook with silence. Every species stared at him, for in his calm voice there was no hatred, no pride, only truth. And the truth was heavier than any weapon. Draker, the old historian, rose with trembling hands. She looked at Kane and whispered, "You are the coldest killers alive, but not because you love war, because you never lose when war is forced upon you." Kane's gaze swept across the chamber. "Understand this lesson," he said. "Leave us be, and you will never hear our silence again. But if you raise your hand against us, if you call us prey, then we will show you the predator. And when the predator comes, it does not stop until the hunt is finished." The council bowed their heads, not in respect, but in fear. For they knew his words were true. They could not erase humanity. They could not chain them. To try would be to end themselves. And so the meeting ended without treaties, without peace, but with something stronger: silence. A silence that spread across the galaxy. Every empire pulled back. Every fleet stood down, because the galaxy had learned its final lesson. Humans were feared not for their numbers, not for their weapons, but for their will. The will to survive at any cost, the will to become colder than the void itself, the will to never stop until the last threat was gone. From that day forward, the galaxy lived with the truth. The predators were not beasts, not monsters from forgotten worlds. The predators were human, and every species knew to provoke them was to invite extinction. For when the galaxy learned why humans are feared as the coldest killers alive, it was already too late. 2.